learned, so maybe I need to hear something about second stage recovery. And one of the things about second stage recovery, before you can be in the second stage, you have to be in the first stage. And first stage recovery is really about breaking the primary addiction. It is about looking at the low self-esteem that comes with addiction. It is about putting your whole self into recovery when it is first stage. I mean, that has got to be primary. I mean, you can't focus on anything in the early stages of recovery except recovery. That includes family, that includes, you do, if you have a job in early stage recovery, a lot of people don't. They have drank or have had their addiction has, kept them from working. So, nevertheless, I want you to really think about your primary addiction and where are you today in that, and are you in good recovery from your primary addiction? Because if you aren't, second stage is not for you. You're not there. And so I want to give you a little assignment, if you will take an assignment, and that is to write out what recovery is to you. What does your recovery look like? And I've got a guy there, Marcel Fulton. I hope he will be sharing in a little while if he stays on. And this is hard to do because I'm used to seeing y'all, and I love to see you. But anyway, it is what it is. So, I'm giving you an assignment to define what your recovery looks like. If you can't define it, you may not have it. It's just that much, that's just a fact. If you can't define what your recovery is, you may not have good recovery. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is switching addictions. In recovery, from the primary, a lot of people began to switch addictions. And when they switch addictions is... sobriety is being free of any mind-altering chemical or behavior. Now, right at first, and I keep saying this, you must, if you're an alcoholic, you're going to have to get sober. You're going to have to get sober. And a lot of people some people who have, who are alcoholics may have eating disorders. That needs to be addressed. So any substance that you use must be addressed in first stage recovery. And then in second stage recovery, what happens is that we need to begin to look at what second stage recovery is. And, you've heard me talk about when Bill W., who was the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, 16 years sober. Bill didn't want to drink. That desire to drink was removed from his brain the day that he had a spiritual experience, never to drink again. But his behavior and the mental disease on the inside of him, not the craving for alcohol, but what at 16 years sober, Bill didn't want to drink again, but he wanted to kill himself. And what Bill did, he wrote us a letter. What happened to my letter? He wrote a letter on depression, and I'm going to hold it up and show it to you. It's a long letter that he wrote to people in AA, and he sent it out to everyone. 16 years sober, and what his conclusion was that the dependency had to be broken on people, places, and things. He had such a dependence on AA even. I mean, he got off his self-worth. Bill and Lois both really gave their lives to Alcoholics Anonymous and to Al-Anon. Really, once they committed themselves to the program and to taking the word across the world, they never had a home. They lived in 51 different houses. Sometimes they would go speak somewhere and they wouldn't have a place for them to stay, wouldn't have money to put them in a hotel, and they would stay in the meeting room, spend the night in the meeting room. So they devoted themselves to first stage recovery for people. And 16 years sober, Bill was very dependent on people that he helped for his self-worth. And he came to realize that. And that, I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, God revealed that to him. Also, he knew that he had a complete dependence on his wife, Lois. They were like enmeshed. And what I believe God revealed to Bill is that dependence, and he called it dependence, that dependence on people, places, and things had to be broken at depth. So Bill, he was talking about codependency before any of us in the field were talking about it. He was talking about codependency. Codependency is getting our good feelings outside ourselves from other people, places, and things, and getting our bad feelings. Someone does something, and we can't set a boundary, and it hurts our sensitive feelings. That is what codependency is, getting our good and bad feelings outside ourselves. And another part of codependency is that dependence on taking care of others. We really want to take care of others. And so Bill realized, and I want to read you this, what Bill wrote. I want to read it out of his words. He said, "My basic flaw had always been dependence, absolute dependence on people or circumstances to supply me with prestige." He was a stockbroker before he sobered up, and he loved being in that arena and that society, and that he had some money. He was a wheeler dealer, and so he knew that had to be broken at depth, that prestige, the security in romance. Bill was a womanizer. Do y'all know that? Bill loved women. And so he also said, failing to get these according to my still childish dreams and specifications, I had fought for these things. And when defeat came, so did depression. He suffered from so much depression, Bill did, and anxiety, and sobriety. So a lot of people in sobriety suffer from depression and anxiety. And depression in today's time, it absolutely can be treated. So it says here, he says, there wasn't a chance of making the way of life until these fatal and really absolutely dependencies were cut away. So he was talking about codependency way back then, and how he had grew up emotionally and spiritually and physically dependent on people, places, and things, and then that carried over into his life with his wife. So codependency is real important in second stage recovery, to look at codependency, study it, see what it is, do your work around it, and then Stage 2 recovery is, in essence, like I said, is codependency work. It's codependency recovery. And used to, we didn't know what codependency was. It is a freestanding disease by itself, and it must be treated as a freestanding disease. When an addict gets into recovery, particularly an alcoholic or a drug addict, if they really do what is told to them to do, if they really follow directions, get a sponsor, all the things that we need to do to recover, in about 2 years, an alcoholic or a drug addict, they're in pretty good shape. They're back living life, they're back into society, they're working a good program. With eating disorders, it takes longer. But basically, people do recover. with codependency, and I'm sad to say this, research shows that it takes 8 to 9, 10 years to recover from codependency. And the reason for that is people find it hard to identify it and find it unwilling to recover from it, because a lot of people like the behavior that they get in codependency, because in codependency a lot of times we want to tell other people what to do. We're centered on and focusing on what other people are doing. So codependency has so many realms of it. It goes out in a lot of different areas. So codependency is part of second stage recovery work. And then, in the big book, it talks about what we think is how we act. And how we act becomes a habit. And that habit then becomes our character or who we are. Those are the things that we have to look at. We must look at our thinking. Every action, there's a thought that precedes every action. We don't just fall into bad thinking, or bad behavior. It starts with the thought. So how we think needs to be cleared up. And this is what the thing about thinking, and I'm going to talk a little bit here about sponsorship. When those thoughts come up about, that we're angry at this person or that person, or we're just not getting our way, I'll tell you, the program works because what we teach people in the 12-step program is get a sponsor. Get someone that knows everything about you and loves you anyway. They may not like you, but they're going to love you. And they will love you through recovery, and they'll walk you through recovery. So when those thoughts come to mind, you pick up the phone and you call someone before you act on the thought. Or if you go ahead and act on the thought, in the midst of the action, you can call someone. You don't have to continue on the action. Call someone, because if you don't, that particular action, if you keep doing it, it's going to become a habit. And this is where I'll go back to switching addictions. That's when switching addictions comes up, because you may, and we treat a lot of people that have long-term recovery from alcoholism, and they'll boast about it, and that is a big deal. I am not putting down recovery from alcoholism in any way, but they'll come to us weighing 250 pounds, 300 pounds, or 70 pounds, where they will have switched addictions, or a lot of times the eating disorder will be the primary. They will be in the eating disorder maybe in their younger life and then pick up alcoholism, but nevertheless, just being sober or being dry from, it's not sobriety, being dry from alcohol is not actually sobriety. Sobriety is being clean and from all addictions. And so this is where we have buried a lot of good recovering alcoholics. We bury them from diabetes, we bury them from complications from smoking. Our two co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous died of smoke-related diseases. We didn't know back then how deadly smoking was. We know today, and we don't know how bad vaping is. We don't know what it's doing to the body. But I'll go to meetings and I'll see people outside the meetings. I'll see people in the bathrooms. I'll see people sometimes sneak around inside a big meeting and vape. Vaping is not sobriety, folks. I hate to tell you, and I'm not going to get into all of that. But anyway, what we think about is what we act on, and what we act on becomes a habit, and then those habits become our character, that becomes who we are. And what that character is, we're an addict, we're a using addict. So, number 6 is we must look at childhood trauma. Not everyone who is an addict, and do not hear me saying it, not everyone who is an addict has childhood trauma. But if a person does, it must be treated. And here it shows what we say childhood trauma is anything less than nurturing to a child. Think about that. Anything less than nurturing to a child. Now, there's 5 forms of childhood abuse. There is sexual abuse, that's usually at the top, sexual abuse. Now, there's different forms of sexual abuse. There's overt, there's covert. There is, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to go into detail, but sexual abuse is a big thing with children. Abuse, and that must be addressed in sobriety because it's not what we're drinking or what we're eating, but it's what we're drinking over and what we're eating. Now, I will tell you, we drink and we take drugs and we eat because we have an addiction, and a substance eases that pain. And so if we didn't have the pain, we wouldn't be seeking out something to ease it. And so this is where we must look at childhood trauma. So it's the sexual abuse, and then there's emotional abuse, talking down to children, calling them names. That's emotional abuse. Raging at children, and that was what I did. I had that emotional build up, and I would blow up, and I'd blow up at those that I loved the most, and that was my beloved children. And it was all driven by unresolved childhood trauma. I had, on a certain level, I knew about my childhood. I knew about the sexual abuse, but knowing it and working on it is 2 different things. And it really took me about 12 years to get completely through the sexual abuse from a family member. And I didn't work on it all the time. I'd go to treatment for 30 days. I would have a reprieve, and then those feelings to eat or to drink would come up, and I would go back and I'd do another 8-day or another 6-day. I kept working on it till I woke up one day and it was gone. So emotional abuse can come from parents who have unresolved childhood issues, that child carrying around that childhood trauma. And so another one is intellectual abuse. Calling children stupid, that is abusive. Calling people, saying, you're not smart, or comparing one child with the other. You're not as smart as your sister, you're not as smart as your brother. That's intellectual abuse. Or forcing children to go past where they are in their childhood development, wanting them to excel beyond where they are. All of that is intellectual abuse. And then another one is religious abuse. Now, religious abuse, and we live in a town with 3 church colleges, religious colleges, universities, and there's good people in them. And I'll tell you, there's some sick people in them where religion has been crammed down their throats. I'm talking about religion. I'm not talking about spirituality. There is a big difference between religion and spirituality. And so when religion is, when it's withheld from children, when, I believe it is absolutely part of parenting is to teach children about God, or to teach children about your own personal preference of religion, but not cramming it down their throat and not making them bad, awful, and wrong. So the last one is, I'm thinking about it, I can't think about the 5th one, but it'll come to me in just a second. But there's 5 forms of childhood abuse. And that's why when second stage recovery is looking at all the trauma. Now, we don't want to stay stuck there. When people come and do our intensives, or come to treatment, one of the things we do is we take them back to their childhood. Not to beat up anyone or to make mom and dad wrong, any of that. It is about, and some parents are really wrong. Some parents have been very abusive to children, but that is not physical. Okay, I left out the physical abuse. Thanks, Sarah. She gave me the physical. Yeah, physical, that is beating children. And what we say in my children, when I say this about physical abuse, my children, grown adult children, think, well, we wished you had felt that when we were growing up. But my age, when we were raising kids, we were taught to spank children. I do not believe in it today. I do not believe in it today. Now, I know the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. I could show you scriptures, and I've got some preachers on here, and I'm not going to argue with you, but I'd like to talk to you about what that rod is. Spare the rod. That I do not believe any way that means to be a child. I don't, and I'm not going to get into that argument. But I don't believe that. See, discipline, I believe, and can come from the word disciple. And disciple is about leading, and that's what good parenting is. And it takes time to do that good kind of parenting, that type of discipline. It takes time and attention. It doesn't take any time to get mad at a kid, pick them up, get a belt, and just beat the crap out of them. That doesn't take any time at all. And particularly if a parent has their own anger, they'll put their anger out on that kid. I do not believe in that today. I do not. A day in the life of a child is much different than a day in the life of an adult. And it's those things that stick really, really long in a child's brain. So, I kind of lost my train of thought here, but physical abuse is very valid. So we take people back when they come here to do work. We do take them back to their childhood. And we are really not in the business of trying to do a witch hunt and find everything bad, awful, and wrong about your life. But a day in the life of a child is different. And something can be said, a word can be said, a look. A look. My kids used to say they'd rather have a spanking than for me to give them the look, and so there's different ways that we can abuse children. And so we take people back to look at their childhood, and it is to get their own story straight, to look at their own story. Because when something has happened to a child, and it doesn't all come from parents, I'm here to tell you, children get abused in churches. They can get sexually abused, they can get intellectually abused, they can get abused across the board in churches and in schools, any place where an adult or an older child has access to a child, there is a chance of abuse. That's why parents need to talk about to their children about how to keep themselves safe, and because any form of abuse goes to a child's heart. And what happens is, particularly if they have a sensitive little heart and they're getting ready to grow up to be an addict, what happens, that abuse goes to the heart of a child, and it begins to make them think that is who they are. I know with my upbringing, I blame myself for the abuse that I received. Well, if I had done better, if I'd done this better, children are perfectly imperfect, precious children of God. They are precious. They need to be treated precious. But so getting back to working on your trauma, that is part of second stage recovery work. Because if you don't get free of it, the pain of the childhood, unresolved childhood issues, the pain of that can go up to your brain and say, I know how you can recover. How you can feel better. And that is, you can go take a drink. You can go take a drug. One won't hurt. You can go eat over it. You can starve over it. Use a substance. That's what addicts are used to doing, is easing the pain of living. So that's why we are really big on helping people look at their childhood issues. And I will tell you, sometimes it's teachers, it's coaches. We've worked with people that have been, gymnasts. Lord God, the abuse that kids that have been in the Olympics have or adults that have been in the Olympics, the type of abuse that goes on there. I won't go into all of that. But anyway, all right, so trauma. I have just about beat that one to death. So another thing that we must talk about in second stage recovery work is relapse. Relapse is a part of the addiction process. That is one reason that the American Medical Association declared it a disease. Any disease has to have a relapse component. And so addictions do have a relapse component. That is second stage recovery. You must study about relapse. Don't make it your life study, but know about relapse. And relapse never starts with the picking up. Relapse happens way before a person picks up the first drink or the first bite or the first drug. It happens way before that. And usually the family can predict a relapse before it ever happens, because it's about changed behavior. This is why we have, those of us that are addicts, we don't get any days off. And we've got to look at our behavior. Next week I'm going to talk about having an attitude of gratitude. If we don't have that attitude of gratitude, we'll get into thinking that society owes us something, or that our family owes us something. Look how hard I've worked in my recovery. Bless my heart. I need a day off. Or I just have gone to meetings and I don't like going to those meetings anymore. All they talk, when I hear people saying they don't like to go to meetings anymore, you can see a relapse in the horizon. I've never seen it fail. When I was at the drug alcohol treatment center every morning, I'd go down into detox to see who had showed up the night before. Many times, because I was there quite a few years, many times I would have someone that had gone through the program. They would be there in detox. And I would ask them, well, what happened? And I've never heard anybody say, I don't know what happened. I've been going to a meeting a day. I call my sponsor. I read the literature. I go to meetings. I work with others. I don't know what happened. I've never heard them say that. Ever, ever, ever. What I hear is, and I still hear it when people are in relapse, well, I just got tired of going to meetings. Or I got busy. I got so involved in volunteer work, and I thought, well, I could help others that way in my volunteer work instead of going to meetings. Or they will say things like, well, my family got tired of me going to meetings. I was spending too much time in meetings instead of being at home with them. Or they'll say things like, well, my kids are so active in school. I go to so many ball games. I do this. And all of that's wonderful, and we encourage you to do all of that. But I'll tell you what, if you don't do your program, you will relapse. I've seen it. Now, if you can figure out another way to recover without doing a simple program of recovery, go for it. Like with eating disorder people, the obesity. And that is not all people in treatment centers who treat eating disorders consider obesity an eating disorder. I don't know what in God's green earth name they think an eating disorder is if obesity is not, but I'll let them, I hear is an eating disorder is bulimia and anorexia. Sure it is. But I also believe, they call it binge eating, but I also believe binge eating results in uh, obesity, and I believe obesity is an eating disorder. I think it's a physical, mental, and spiritual disease that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And so now the eating disorder field, and particularly obesity, and I am for whatever works. I don't, if surgery works, it is a tool. It's a tool. But whatever a person chooses, to do about recovery, remember, it's a tool. And if they will do that along with their recovery, with the surgery does, and now the shot, all that does is address the physical part of the disease. And so for an alcoholic, if they only stop drinking, what you would have is a very sick, hard to get along with, a person that has one nerve left and everybody's getting on it. They're irritable, restless, and discontented because they want to drink. You don't take away one behavior without replacing it with another one. And so when a person stops the substance, you replace it with the program. You replace it, you can deal with you can stop using, that's the physical part. And you can go to a therapist and get some help emotionally. But I will tell you what the real help is the spiritual aspect. God can and will heal any area of our life that we're willing to surrender it to Him. He's not going to knock the drink out of our hand or the food, but if we surrender it to Him, He will bless every effort that we have toward recovery. So these shots, and they are plentiful, and I am for them. I am seeing great results with people that have been diabetics for years that are getting help through because they take the shot. It takes away their hunger. They don't eat. They're losing weight. They are getting healthy. I am for that. I am for that. But the minute they stop taking that shot, and they warn them about that, they will go back with the eating and they will gain the weight back. So while they're taking the shot and losing the weight, then that's where the program comes in. That's the foundation, a 12-step program. This is where the spiritual part comes in. So if they will couple that with that, and that's one of the things that we hope to do this coming year, is to provide a place for people to come to where they can have abstinence and sober living, learn how to live sober, and learn how to live abstinence. And if that includes taking the shot, I am all for that. But we want to teach them how to live when they quit taking the shot, because if they don't change, the disease is from the inside out, not the outside in. It has many facets. It has that physical component. It has that emotional component. And the recovery is the physical of the spiritual part. So that's what we're going to be really emphasizing in our new program that we're excited about. We're excited about offering long-term, short-term, long-term, whatever, to help people practice abstinence. Abstinence from an eating disorder, abstinence from drugs and alcohol in a safe environment. Like I said, with obesity, if that includes taking the shot that is prescribed by a doctor, boy, I'm all for it. And then work on both sides at the same time. Work on the physical part, the emotional part, and the spiritual part at the same time. And people will get well. I mean, they're full of 12-step programs, are full of people that are healthy, that are well. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous said 100 people participated in writing that book, 100 100 recovered alcoholics. I always say recovering, but compulsive overeater, bulimic, alcoholic, all that. But I am recovered today. I am recovered from a hopeless disease that nearly killed me. I am recovered today. And tomorrow I get to do the same things that I'm doing today to stay in recovery. So, all right, trauma, work on childhood trauma, relapse, be aware of relapse, study what relapse is, look at it. Look at the signs and symptoms of pre-relapse. Don't take my word for it. And then number 8, in second stage recovery, you're going to have to start looking at your relationships, because when we're in the disease, we only have eyes for the substance. And then in early stage 1 recovery, we only have eyes for recovery. We don't have a lot of time to spend with our families. And they get irritable, restless, they get discontented, and they get angry at us. That's why we recommend Al-Anon for families, because they get as sick, if not sicker, than the addict does. And so the whole family needs to get in recovery. But in second stage recovery, the addict must begin to look at their relationships. And we don't need a lot of healthy relationships. We can know a lot of people. But to really have deep, friendly relationships, they take work. And it's about learning how to relate to people. I say this a lot, that, well, there is my friend Tracy Merkel. Oh my goodness, it's good to see your name on there. Wished I could see you. Come back when it's...
We can at the end bring them on video.
Okay, so... what was I talking about?
Deep friendships.
Okay, deep friendships. They take work. They don't just happen. It takes time, attention, and direction. And so in stage 1 recovery, we must focus on recovery and on our sponsor and spend time there with our people in recovery. But in stage 2, we must continue that, but we don't have to, rather than going to a meeting in a day, some people go to 2 meetings, 3 meetings. This is my own prescription. I do best with 3 meetings a week. I go to 2 meetings at least every week, and they're not all face-to-face. But I do better. Now, I will tell you personally, I'd rather go to a meeting a day. I have never not liked going to meetings. I love meetings, love them. And I like going to 1 a day. I don't drive today, but I used to go to 1 or 2 meetings a day. I had to kind of quit going to so many meetings and get me a life, but right now I go to 2 meetings, but I really like 3 meetings a week. But talk to other recovering people. I have to talk to somebody every day. When I'm all wrapped up in myself, I make a poor package. And when I'm all by myself, I'm in poor company. So relationships are important. And those relationships with our family members. What I was going to say, Robert Kennedy said, when we die, if we have 3 to 5 really close people who know everything about us and love us anyway, we die rich. It takes time and attention to build really healthy relationships. We may be friendly and have lots of friends and lots of acquaintances, but those deep, real deep relationships, 3 to 5. And so family members, it must be, they feel neglected. A lot of times that's why Al-Anon was started. Bill W. really had the idea for Al-Anon because he got all caught up. His life was spent, and their married life was spent on him drinking, and Lois tried to help him not drink, and that wasn't successful. But then when he sobered up, he put his whole heart into helping others. That's the only way he could stay. Well, he stayed sober because God removed that mental obsession from Bill's mind. It doesn't happen with all alcoholics, but it did with him. Immediate flash of light spiritual experience. And then he gave his life to working with other alcoholics. And one night he put on his coat and hat, and he was walking out of the door of their small apartment in New York. That's when they still had an apartment. Before the Depression got so bad, they couldn't even afford that. But Bill was going out the door and telling Lois bye, and Lois got angry. And Lois said, "Damn you in your AA meetings." And she took off her high heel shoe and threw it at Bill. This is his beloved wife that had gone through everything with him through the disease. But now in recovery, she didn't have a place. He would go, and it would be all men, and they would go to AA meetings. There was no women at that time. It was all men. And then the women, the wives they'd made a lot of times in a house. The wives could go along, but they'd stay in the kitchen, make coffee and cook and bake cookies. And the AAs a lot of times would make fun of them, and they'd call them cooking, baking bitches. I hate to use that word. That's what they called beloved wives of the early AA pit guys. But Bill realized that Lois had gotten as sick as he had, and it was his idea to start a program for the wives and family members. And he did. He helped her start Al-Anon, but it was because he saw how sick Lois was getting and how angry he was getting at her. So those family relationships need to be restored. I'll tell you what, in early sobriety, particularly if you've been someone in your recovery that has relapsed, I'll tell you, your family doesn't believe a word you tell them about your recovery. And a lot of times they'll mark you off for the Christmas list. They'll turn their back on you and they'll be angry at you. And that's none of your business. You just go ahead and recover regardless of where that family's standing behind you or not. Because if you recover and if you stay in recovery, and I will tell you, they are watching you. They have a way of watching you. And they love you, but they are hurt to the bone. They do not realize that it's an addiction. They think you've drank at them or binged and purged over them or took drugs over them. They don't know that it is a disease. And that's where, you must help them in some way, teach them that it's a disease. But the main thing that you can teach them is what recovery looks like and recover. And sometimes families don't get back together. But I've seen whole families, 3 or 4 generations, get back together in sobriety. So that takes time, and that's going to be the responsibility of the addict. You just love that family where they are. If they don't want anything to do with you, you pray for them, put them in God's hands, and just keep going to those meetings and walk them down the road. And then second stage recovery is about the workplace. You suit up and show up. If you still are fortunate enough to have a job, or if you still are fortunate enough to be in school and they haven't kicked you out, in recovery, in second stage recovery, we get to go to work. We get to show up and keep our word, and we get to go back to college. We get to get those degrees. That's what second stage recovery is. But if you forget that you're an addict and you quit doing your program, I don't care. You can have every degree in the world and it's not going to do you any good, because you will relapse. You will relapse if you don't do something every day toward your recovery. It's like a diabetic. Addictions are much like diabetes. And I've got a friend here, Rose, and I hope Rose won't mind me mentioning this. Rose has diabetes, and Rose has a heart problem. I hope you could look. I wish you could all see Rose in person. Rose is Misty, Misty is our Director of Food Services here at Shays. And Rose came to work with Misty and for Misty for a while in the kitchen. And she took Shays' meal plan. And she's lost every bit of her weight. And she keeps those, her numbers, her blood sugar levels. I mean, she works a program of taking care of herself. And if you want to know how she does it, ask Rose. She works at it. and she is within a normal weight range. She exercises, she does everything. That's how you treat diabetes, folks. Now, that's how you treat addictions. You have to treat it every day, and Rose isn't going to be able to just do it for a year and then quit. You know, she's got to do it the rest of her life. And that's how we are with addictions. We don't get any days off. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. It's another day on the calendar, and we can be thankful that we're still alive and grateful. But it's not about, oh, here it comes, we get to binge, you know. Okay, so I'm using Rose as an example that diseases have to be treated, chronic diseases have to be treated all the time. I have diabetes, I have to treat it. But the main disease that has to be treated on a daily basis is any addiction. We don't get any days off, and I am wearing that out. So, all right, I'm going to repeat this, and I want to turn it over with you because I have said it. If over through this talk, and I'll say it again. You know, when I was at the Serenity House, and I don't know, I think I made this up, but you've heard it before, but I was working with drug addicts, alcoholics every day. And there was the First Baptist Church on the corner, and they had a big family life center, and they had a wonderful health spa, and they had just a lot of equipment, and they had hot tubs, all of that, and they were so gracious to let me bring our clients over there. And so they would be in the workout room and working with, in there, and I would, one day was standing out on the front desk, just shooting the breeze with the man that worked at the front desk. And he was a paraplegic. He was paralyzed from the waist down. And he had been in Vietnam. And, I was always thanking him for his service. And thank all of you people on here for your service. We just celebrated you with Veterans Day, but we need to celebrate you every day. But anyway, he was sitting in his wheelchair, and I was standing there in the, at the counter. And he said, well, I see these people come in here, and they stay a long time, and then they leave, and then some of them come back again. And he said, why don't they stay in recovery? What happens to them? And he said, what do they have to do to stay in recovery? I said, well, it's really a simple program for complicated people. And what happens is addicts forget these 5 simple things. And every addict has to do this every single solitary day if they want to stay in recovery. And what they are is, number 1, is to get up on our knees, or you can lay in bed. Now, this morning I laid in bed, and I have a list of people I pray for, and a lot of you are on this list, so you're prayed up this morning. I laid in bed and I pray. I have a long list of people I pray for. I call out their name. And I ask God for another day of recovery. And then I'll go into the bathroom, I'll be brushing my teeth, and I'll be going over that list, and I ask for another day of recovery. So that's the first thing, is ask God of a morning. Invite God into your life and ask Him for another day of recovery. The second thing is read some form of program literature. And the Big Book tells us this. If you belong to a religious denomination, read, that wants you to read certain specific religious material, do that. Read some prayers, read scriptures in the Bible, but include some program literature. Get your meditation book, read that. But get on your knees and ask God for another day of recovery, and then get up off your knees, read read the Big Book of Alcoholics, some kind of literature. And then number 3, go to a meeting. I'll tell you what, folks, there's no excuse in the world today to not go to a meeting. You can get them on Zoom, you can get them on, you can call, you can go to face-to-face meetings. Face-to-face meetings are open, so go to a meeting. And then, including with going to meetings, is pick up the phone and call your sponsor. Worth the 12 steps with a sponsor. It's not a help yourself program. You pick up the phone, call a sponsor, work the steps. And then the fifth thing is we must give it away. We've got to work with others. If we don't give it away, we can't keep it. And right now, y'all are helping me, sitting there listening to me, me share a little bit to give it away. And go to meetings. I go to meetings, and when I walk into a meeting, I am not a professional. I am not. I am just another member of the fellowship, and I never let on that I'm anything but a member of the fellowship, because I go there for one reason, and that is to treat my eating disorder, my alcoholism, treat my codependency. That's the only reason that